Creepy Carrie.
Yeah. So as I like to refer to this, Humiliation the movie.
Yeah, I call it the anti-bullying campaign. Yeah.
It's like, and again, we've talked about this with some other movies, I think, where like, yeah, kids can be jerks, like whether they're elementary, middle school, and high school, like they can be super mean, obviously. But this is like to an extreme. Like, and I'm sure things this mean have probably happened at some point at some high school, but I don't know. Like, so I think my first response to seeing, I have seen it before, and we should mention we're talking about is it 70? What year did it come out? 70 something?
70 something.
It came out before Halloween, which surprised me. I didn't know that until I looked it up.
The OG Carrie, 1976.
The OG Carrie, 76.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so that's even older than I thought. So starring Sissy Spacek, directed by Brian De Palma, which I was texting you about. I had no idea he directed that. And he's one of my, I wouldn't say like favorite directors, but he is consistently good. Like, I mean, there have been some ups and downs, but like Scarface and some other movies are what he's known for. And I think he does a really good job with this. I mean, I think just the framing and the story, and it's a great movie. And so now before we get into it, I guess you said you watch this like once a year, something like that, right?
I really do watch this movie quite frequently. It's probably getting up there in movies that like I could quote if it was on. Like I love it. And it's I don't know. I do. I like it so much. I've read the book. I've seen obviously the original. I've seen the remake. And I still think out of those three, the original movie is the best version of this story.
I have not read the book, but I like most Stephen King stuff, so I'm sure I would probably like the book. And I remember seeing this years ago, but as I told you, I think it's probably been at least a decade since I had watched it until last week when I rewatched it. And I liked it even more upon a rewatch. I remember liking it the first time I saw it, but I didn't like love it. But I think watching it again, I was like, you know what? Like, I really do like this movie. Like, it's a good movie.
I think it's a movie that is, the more you watch it, the more you like it. I just have very vivid memories of being a kid and having my mom say to me, they're all going to laugh at you, like, as a joke. But like, so the rhetoric of Carrie was very present in our household from an early age.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't remember the very first time I saw it. It honestly probably would have been like, it probably was like an edited version on like cable TV, like, USA.
Less naked women then probably,
What's that?
Less naked women, as
right. I mean, like you said,
very awkwardly remembered watching it at the gym.
The whole first like 10 minutes or so, maybe less than that, but the first like stretch of the movie is that like slow motion nakedness too, right? Like at the beginning, which I think ties very heavily into the subtext, and I'm sure we'll kind of talk about that, but there's a lot of stuff going on. But I don't know that we necessarily have to do like a point by point summary of the plot, because my guess would be that people who are watching this have probably seen it before.
And even if they haven't, I think it's been referenced enough in pop culture that I think people pretty much know what the movie's about.
Yeah, I mean, it's in short, it's about a teenage girl with telekinetic powers who is coming of age and everything that goes with that, and is being bullied to the extreme. And something happens that eventually just sets her off, and she basically goes on a rampage. And it's the thing that I think in my head, I remembered the rampage piece being longer than it actually is. Like it wasn't like that crazy.
No, I agree. I do think that was something I noticed this last time I was watching it, because I was really looking at the movie this time from like a critical lens, like knowing we were going to talk about it. And I was like, I love the pacing. I think the pacing of the movie is so strong. But then I got to that scene and I was like, oh, wow, like this really didn't last as long as I remember, which I like, because I think that it gives the audience more of a focus on Carrie herself and her mother and that environment. And the movie is not about the vengeance or revenge, depending on how you want to frame that she takes at the prom, but more about how she's this product of an environment that was incredibly restricted.
Right. I mean, and I think there's a lot of layers to this movie, but I think one of them is like religious extremism. Like I think that's part of it, right? Especially like Protestantism, like that's very like prevalent in this. And of course, her mother, the actress who played her mother, just passed away not long ago.
Right?
Yeah. So, but she does a great job with it. I mean, she's super terrifying, like locking
They got nominated for Academy Awards, and Sissy Spacek won.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay, yeah. I mean, she's great in it. Sissy Spacek is great. But yeah, I mean, like locking her in a closet. I mean, there's all this like, Christian iconography all over the place. And I love kind of toward the end, the framing of that shot where you've got like the really creepy looking crucifixion statue thing kind of as the house is collapsing in on itself, which I had shades of Poltergeist with that at the end. But of course, this came out way before Poltergeist, like the whole
but it
collapsing
does,
in the house. Which, maybe there's some symbolism there about that type of lifestyle kind of dissolving around that time period a little bit. I don't know. I could be reading it too much into that a little bit.
I think if you wanted to write a paper about it, you would be justified in making that connection. I don't know that they were trying to do that, but I think there's a valid observation there.
So what, and I know I've been talking a lot here, Kim, but like what do you love about the movie? Like, I mean, what just kind of stands out for you,
And I will say that I think probably why I loved it so much growing up is I could relate to Carrie, like not exactly, but like
you have telekinetic powers, or you?
I wish I had. I mean, I was definitely like, man, I wish I had powers like Carrie did. And like, so I could relate to this person who felt very much on the outside and wasn't accepted and wanted something about them that was special and different. And so, but that's the only, nothing else relates. Nothing else. I was not raised in a religious extremist household. It was the opposite of that, clearly, because I was watching Carrie. So I think that's what I enjoy. And the way that it's framed is she is not angry. Like, she doesn't want to hurt anybody. She doesn't feel bitter explicitly about all this bullying and this hate. And it really is this moment later on where she snaps. And there is a very specific thing I want to ask you about if and when we talk about that particular moment.
You mean like, and I know we're getting into spoiler territory, but again, I'm not really worried about that given how old the movie is at this point. But are we talking about like when they pour the pig's blood on her head and all that?
Yes. So, okay. So when the blood hits her and she is looking around, and I do believe that it's like not accurate. I think in her mind, she is seeing all of these people laughing, including the and I don't think that's true. I don't think that is clearly, obviously in her mind. Do you think that Carrie thinks that, oh my God, I totally just blanked on his name, that the guy was in on it?
Her date, like the guy that's basically like basically kind of cajoled into taking her to prom. But no, I don't actually. Like, I think
Tommy, because she looks at him like you were part of she just looks so betrayed by everybody.
Right. And I mean, the bucket hits him in the head. And I mean, even there's that slow motion moment. I mean, and I will say this movie makes really good use of slow motion, especially toward the end when like somebody else who's there realizes what's going on and is trying to stop it. And then that one teacher thinks that she's intervening or whatever. But when the bucket of blood pours on her, the date next to her is like, what the hell? In slow motion.
Like he's definitely upset. I don't I as an audience member know he was not in on it and he is mad. But is Carrie so blinded by this moment that she now sees everyone as the enemy, that like nobody is her friend? All of these people are against her, regardless of how they've treated her in the past.
I would say probably. I mean, because she kind of goes into this like blank stare.
Yeah.
And she's just going to take out everyone and anyone that's in her way, basically.
Which I like a lot, because it falls into like this world of extremism, right? Like things cannot be gray. Either everybody's against you or everybody's with you. And so I think it plays into that. And it makes me think, because I have seen Carrie 2, The Rage, or The Rage Carrie 2. I have seen that movie. I also do really like that movie.
Okay, and I have not seen that one. So
very different, obviously. It's a totally different storyline. There's there's a couple little connections to the original. But in her rampage, because there's always going to be a rampage, there is definitely more humanity.
Okay.
Like there is not this total check out. Which she has a different environment that she was raised in and things like that. So it makes sense. But that's why I think about that choice to kind of just make it like she's so blinded by everything that like she can't even see that there might be people here still trying to help her.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is kind of hard to really get a sense of like what her mindset is, but I mean, I guess my takeaway was it was almost like everything her mother warned her about happened, right? And so
Yeah,
because
yeah,
of that and the fact that she is just trying so hard to separate herself from her mother, she can't believe that it played out that way and she just goes berserk in that moment. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
I mean, the other piece of this too, at least in my reading of it, and I think there's a scene early on that really indicates this, is that there's a lot, I think, being said here about sort of taboo topics when it comes to becoming a woman, right?
Yeah.
And how people don't want to talk about a period and all of that kind of stuff. Because I mean, basically, in the first like scene, she's getting like showered with tampons and all of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right? They're like, trying to humiliate her, and then the principal, who is a male, doesn't want to like talk about this at
Yeah,
all.
he
He's
has
just
that
like,
great shot where he's looking at the period blood on the gym teacher shorts, and which
yeah,
is gross. Like that's
right,
gross. Change your clothes. Like that's.
yeah.
But he's like so like, oh my god, women.
Right. Well, and it's kind of a weird symmetry, or kind of actually a smart symmetry, where the movie starts that way, and literally she's covered with blood at the end of it.
Yes.
Right. It's
Oh
like,
yeah. I mean, yes, very beautiful imagery in that sense of like you can't escape it, and this is
right,
your transformation, and it all happens with the blood. Yeah.
right. So, I mean, there's a lot more. I think on a second watch of this, because again, I watched it a long time ago. I feel like I just picked up on a lot more of the nuance that was there,
Yeah.
kind of subtextually a little bit. But um, now, is there anything about the movie that you don't like, or that you think could have been done better?
There's like little things that I have always bothered me just because and in this last watch, I really tried to like process like why. So like the relationship between the most mean girl, Chris, and
Yeah.
John Travolta, her
Right.
boy.
Who I completely forgot was in this movie until I
Oh, I
rewatched.
never forget, never
Yeah.
forget. And their relationship is very volatile. Like, and I tried to like make like why, like they hit each other. They're
Yeah.
mean to each, but like, so that's like what like the scene in the car with them was always really weird for me to watch when I was like younger. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Now as an
Yeah.
adult, I kind of watch that scene and I'm like, oh, like psychologically, I get it. Like why these two people would be attracted to each other and how damaged they are and
Yeah.
all of that. But that was always something I think on like a first watch or even a first couple watches, if you're not really thinking deeply about it, might come off as a really weird interaction between people to like watch them like basically abuse each other.
Yeah, I mean, but you're totally right that like there's a lot more happening in the movie psychologically that people might not pick up on a first watch. Like when you watch it again, you start to see like these characters are actually fairly deeply written. And I mean,
Yes.
whether or not they're really true to a lot of high school interactions, I guess could be debatable, but probably, I mean, I wouldn't say they're like that far off the mark.
Right. They're not like caricatures. They're not like when we were watching Totally Killer. Like it's not
Right.
these very one-dimensional, superficial. You do see those layers. And one of the scenes that I don't like as like a human, but I like as a watcher is the scene where the gym teacher is telling Sue and Tommy, like, why are you doing this? Like, don't you? And she's like, Tommy, don't you think you're going to look ridiculous when you take her? And he isn't defending Sue. Like, he almost wants an out. And it bothered me as a person because I'm like, come on, Tommy, you should be more invested in helping Carrie. But that's like, he probably doesn't want to go with Carrie, but his girlfriend is asking him to, so he's going to do it for her. But like, sure, if there was an out, he would take it. Like,
Right.
So I appreciated that like that felt more real, that like, yeah, he's not into this idea, but like he's gonna do it for Sue.
In the end, I think he does like her, like Carrie.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, that's what Matt and I always talk about. Matt's like, do you think he's real? Like, what's going on with that? And I'm like, I think he genuinely cares for her.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie.
I think the only complaint I have, and this is very minimal, would be because they're asking him to take her to the prom. It's like, what in his mind, how does he think this is embarrassing to Carrie? Like, you know what I mean? Because he doesn't know about the pig blood. Like, he just knows they want him to take her for some, like, it's just a weird connection that is not clear in my mind in his head about like why he feels like, those girls would find it embarrassing for her because he doesn't know about the pig blood, apparently, right?
When who says it? Does the gym teacher say it's embarrassing for Carrie?
Or something, but I'm like, why would it be embarrassing for her? Just because she's shy and reclusive? And
I mean, if I'm thinking about the moment that you're talking about, that's how I always interpreted it, that she doesn't know how to function in these
I know it's
social situations.
It's Carrie coming up the stairs
well,
to have a
reckoning. To see a person, like, you have children. I'm like,
right, I know, yeah.
And so that's how I always see it, that like she's not going to know how to interact and she's going to feel uncomfortable because she probably wouldn't really want to be there. But then I will say a part that I really liked, kind of thinking about her social interaction, is when she gets to the prom, like the people in Tommy's group, like, are very nice to her and authentically. They're engaging, they're talking to her. And I liked that as well, that it wasn't like she walks in and everyone is like, "Ooh, Carrie." Like, there's the people, but then there are people that are just like, "Hey, what's up? Like your dress. Cool, let's go dance."
What I know I'm jumping all over the place here, but what did you think about the scene where the teacher just slaps that one student who is like,
I mean, it was the 70s. So.
Right. I mean, honestly, I didn't really have just given the context of it and everything. I mean, because like this is like one of the most hateable characters ever, and this teacher sees that. I mean, hateable people, right? Yeah. And is like, "No, you're not going to do this or talk to me this way,"
And she even says like, "You're not going to get away with this." Like and the teacher has a reaction like, "Oh my God, I just slapped a student." Like they both recognize that this moment crossed a line. But I would say I feel like it needed to cross that line for the character Chris so that she could feel that motivated to humiliate Carrie, because she was equally as humiliated when slapped by the teacher. And none of her friends stuck up for her. She was abandoned by all these people.
I completely agree from a writing perspective. That had to happen. Yeah. I think they did a good job with the background characters in that scene, kind of like gasping, like, "Oh my gosh, that just happened."
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way the movie ends, again, in case you haven't seen it, which if you're watching this, you probably have, Carrie eventually gets home, kills her mother. And I did like the scene with like the flying knives, and she basically gets crucified in the kitchen, all that kind of stuff. And the house sinks into the ground. And so, the assumption I would assume, because Carrie got stabbed, like, I don't know where, like in the back.
Somewhere in the back.
But she's dead, basically.
Yeah,
right?
Carrie's dead.
Is that what you would take? Is that your takeaway? Like, I wasn't sure with the dream sequence if they're kind of saying like telekinetically communicating or something, but I don't know.
No, I definitely, she's dead. I told you I listened to that podcast, Mental Health is Horrifying, where she goes through horror movies and talks specifically about like the mental health aspects. And the one she did on Carrie, she was talking about that line, "Sin never dies," and how that carries a lot of the story, and how in that dream sequence, now Sue is going to be living with all of this sin because she survived, the survivor's guilt. So now all the sin that Carrie's mom passed on to Carrie is now getting passed on to Sue Snell.
Right. Yeah.
So Carrie's dead for sure.
Carrie will not carry on after that movie because she's gone. But yeah, so what I would say is if you're watching this and you've never seen it, it's 100% worth your time to watch
Definitely.
it. I think it's a classic. There's no denying it's a classic horror movie at this point.
And I think it's a movie, like, I know, like, I have family members who, when they're like trying to figure out when to introduce their children to horror, this is one of the movies they start with, because yes, there's obviously a lot of blood at the end, but it's not blood in a violent, like there's not a lot of that. And I know, like, my sister tries to find movies to show the kids that she lives with, and they are young. And I think the nakedness is just why they haven't done that one yet, because there's just and it's not sexual. It's just a lot of naked people.
It's a very kind of matter of fact opening, right? Like, this, it is what it is,
Yeah, which I don't know. I like a lot, because I think it tries to be like, yeah, women's bodies, matter of fact, who cares? We're all running around naked, la la la. And then, but really, like, we know that in society there are all of these restrictions and ideas and like taboos. And so it's like the movie very much wants all of us to live in that happy dreamland where everyone's just prancing around naked and nobody cares. But that's just,
and then there's that like hard reality of Carrie being like absolutely tormented, and like that cut to that where she's in the shower, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. I know that would be like legit. That is like lifelong trauma. Like if somebody
Because
really endured that, that would
I mean,
be.
just imagine as a person, like out of any part of your body, you just start bleeding. Like your ear just starts bleeding one day.
Right.
You're gonna be like, "Oh my god, I'm dying!" Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna, So she has no
Well,
concept of what that
right.
means.
And I mean, she gets home and she's like, "Mama, why didn't you tell me?" Like clearly nobody's explained to her. Like when
Oh
you get to
yeah,
a certain age, like
they're very clear that she did not know. And the podcast I was listening to was like, can we just talk about how the school system has just as much failed to educate Carrie White on what's been going on with her body, which is, and I don't know much about religious extremism, and I think the mom is amazing and her character's written so well. But I guess, like, at what point does it cross the line of not being realistic? That, like, even in religious extremism, you wouldn't tell your daughter about this thing that just happens to every girl. Like, you truly believe that it will only happen to her if she sinned? Like,
well, and you're totally right about like when does it cross the line to becoming a caricature, maybe a little bit. Like,
yeah.
and I think the two examples of that to me in the movie are like you said, the mom. Like, I mean, I don't, I've never encountered somebody that crazy, essentially, but then on the flip side of that, the bully being written to the extreme of like, it's almost like what would be just the epitome of a bully, and what would be the epitome of a really religious, overzealous mom or something like that, right? And
Yeah.
they tried to write those characters and make those characters, but I think it worked, obviously, in the larger context of the story, and just the way things played out. But there was that super creepy scene when she gets home from the prom and she goes upstairs and the mom is just like standing there behind the door.
Because it's like, the mom has just been waiting for her to get home because she's going to kill her. Like,
Yeah.
thou cannot suffer a witch to live. Like, so she just knows then that's, and she doesn't even know anything that's happened. She has no idea that Carrie just burned down the whole school and killed a whole bunch of people.
Well, and of course, from her point of view, it's like, oh, she has satanic powers or whatever. Like,
Yeah. And there is a lot more of that in the book. There is a lot more with the telekinesis in the book.
Okay. Which, I mean, I would say if I had any criticism, I would have loved to have seen a little bit more with that. Because, I mean, like, there's the scene in the library where she's researching it and that kind of stuff. Like, I would have liked to see just a little bit more, but I don't know if it would have detracted from the ultimate, like, freak out at the end or not.
Yeah, and that's where I love the pacing, and so I don't want more, but, like, I do think it comes on. She accepts it very suddenly. Like, she knows in the office with the principal when she sends his ashtray to the ground, like, she immediately knows that she can do something here with her mind.
Right.
We could have gotten maybe one more scene where something happened out of her control, and then she's like, "Wait a second, what? I can do things?" Like, oh, it's very like, "Oh, yep, I can do things. Cool."
And I'm curious because I haven't watched it. I'll have to watch it. Like, does the remake do more with that or not really?
Yes, because the remake follows the book more.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Which that's why, like, all Stephen King remakes tend to follow the book more, which is why I don't like the remakes, because the books aren't very good.
Well, I feel like 70s to 80s era Stephen King books to movies are really good. Like, you think about The Shining, Carrie, like just all these other ones, like Maximum Overdrive.
Yes.
Did you ever see Maximum Overdrive? Have you seen that one?
No.
I think that one, let me see if there was Stephen King actually directed one of these movies. I can't remember which one it is, and his directing was not great. Let me see who directed this one. That might have been him. But let's see, he's pulling it up. This one was directed by Stephen King. If you've never seen it, it is like the epitome of an 80s horror movie where you've got like Emilio Estevez at a truck stop and these machines are possessed and they kind of come
alive. Okay. I've seen like the poster for that somewhere.
It's a ton of fun. Like, it's a really stupid movie, but it is a lot of fun to watch. Like, so there's that. If you're looking for another Stephen King movie from that kind of time period, 1986 is when it came out. So, okay, well, I know both you and I have parental duties to go.
Yes, we have children to gather.
Yeah. So it was fun. I know you can't wait to talk about Trick or Treat.
I've got to find a way to suffer through the rest of that.
We'll figure out, I think, one more Halloween-ish movie, maybe. I don't know. I know we're coming up short on time now, but maybe like into early next week, we could think of something. I don't know.
We'll figure it out. Yes, we will.
Figure it out. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and we will be back soon.